Hey everyone, welcome back to Life Stories Network, the place where real emotions meet unforgettable life journeys. Today's story is about ambition, sacrifice, and a truth that hits deeper than money ever could. It's titled, I Built a 45 Miller Company Alone. Now my parents say I owe them for every birthday they missed. So grab your coffee, sit back, and let's dive into this roller coaster of success, guilt, and family expectations. I still remember the night I decided to change my life. It was 2 a.m., and I was sitting in my tiny apartment staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. I had just checked my bank balance, $38.67. I couldn't even afford rent that month. My parents had stopped helping me years ago because they thought I was wasting time chasing business dreams. My dad told me to get a real job. My mom cried, saying she just wanted me to have a stable life. But something inside me whispered, "You're meant for more." For years, I worked odd jobs. Delivery driver by day, freelance web designer by night. I watched people my age buying houses, getting married, traveling. Meanwhile, I was drowning in late bills, eating instant noodles, and trying to convince myself that one day, this struggle would make sense. My parents barely called anymore. When they did, it always ended in arguments. "When are you going to grow up?" my dad would yell. "Dreams don't pay rent." I'd hang up and cry silently into my pillow, but I never gave up. One night, I had an idea. I noticed how small businesses struggled to get online. They didn't know how to build websites or market their products. So I created a simple tool, a platform where anyone could make a professional online store in minutes. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. I named it BizNest. I built it from my old laptop that overheated every 30 minutes. I didn't have investors, fancy offices, or even a team. Just me, coffee, and a dream that refused to die. The first 6 months were brutal. I coded until sunrise, sent hundreds of cold emails, and faced rejection after rejection. My parents didn't even know what I was doing anymore. They thought I was wasting my life. "You'll end up broke and alone," my mother said one day when I asked for a small loan. That was the last time I asked for help. Something broke inside me that day. I decided I'd make it, not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. Then, everything changed. One small bakery owner in Texas used my platform and doubled her sales in a week. She posted about it online. Suddenly, my inbox exploded. Dozens of small businesses wanted in. I barely slept for days working to handle the demand. Within a year, BizNest went viral. By the second year, I had a team of 10. Investors started calling me, and the same parents who once doubted me suddenly started bragging to their friends that their son was a tech genius. I should have felt proud. But deep down, something felt off. When my first major funding deal came through, I wired $5,000 to my parents. It wasn't much compared to what I had earned, but it was my way of saying, "Thank you for everything." My mom cried. My dad said he was proud. For the first time in my adult life. I thought that moment healed everything between us. But I was wrong. It was just the beginning of a new kind of pain. Over the next few years, BizNest grew beyond anything I ever imagined. I was on magazine covers, giving talks, flying first class. People called me self-made, but every time I heard that word, I thought of my parents. Were they proud? Or were they still silently judging me? I didn't know. I tried calling them more often, but the conversations were never easy. They'd ask about my life, but then they'd always remind me of something I owed them. "Remember when we paid for your college? Remember all those nights we stayed up worrying about you?" I laughed it off at first, thinking it was just guilt-tripping humor. But soon it didn't feel like a joke anymore. One evening after a long day at the office, I got a message from my mom. It simply said, "We need to talk about what you owe us." My heart sank. What did that even mean? I called her immediately, and she said something that would forever change the way I saw family. "You wouldn't be where you are without us," she said calmly. "Every meal we fed you, every birthday gift, every school trip, we sacrificed for you. Now that you have millions, it's only fair you pay us back." I didn't even know how to respond. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. "Mom," I whispered, "you're my parents. You raised me because you loved me, not because it was an investment, right?" But her silence said everything. My dad took the phone next and said, "We gave you life, son. You can't put a price on that, but maybe you can try." That night, I sat in my penthouse apartment, surrounded by everything I once dreamed of. Glass walls, city lights, expensive furniture, and felt completely empty. I had built a company worth $45 million, I had fame, success, and everything money could buy. But I'd lost something priceless: the unconditional love of the two people who gave me life. I started replaying my entire life in my head. Every time my parents skipped their own needs to buy me something. Every time my mom packed my lunch for school or stayed up when I was sick. Every time my dad worked overtime to pay for my tuition. Maybe they did sacrifice more than I realized. Maybe I did owe them, but not in money. I owed them gratitude, understanding, and forgiveness. But that's not what they wanted anymore. They sent me a detailed list of everything they claimed to have spent on me, growing up, from diapers to college books, totaling over to $10,000. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was this really happening? Were they turning my childhood into an invoice? I stared at the spreadsheet my father had made, wondering if they had any idea how much that broke me inside. But here's the thing. Sometimes success doesn't change people. It reveals who they really are. I didn't owe them money. I owed them love. But now love had a price tag. Welcome back to Life Stories Network, where every story reminds us that success doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes it brings confrontation. This is part 2 of I built a $45 company alone. Now, my parents say I owe them for every birthday they missed. If you haven't heard part 1, go check it out first, because what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about family, love, and obligation after that shocking phone call. I didn't sleep for days. I kept scrolling through the spreadsheet my parents sent me, line by line: formula milk, school uniforms, birthday cakes, even emotional support during teenage years. I felt like my entire childhood had been turned into a transaction. Every memory that once made me feel warm now felt tainted with a price tag. I couldn't understand how two people who once held me in their arms could suddenly treat me like a business deal. I tried reasoning with them. I called my mom first. I told her, "Mom, you can have anything you want. I'll buy you a new house, I'll pay for your travels, I'll take care of you for life. But don't make this about debt. I'm not your customer. I'm your son." She stayed quiet for a few seconds and then said, "You're only saying that because you have money now. If we hadn't done everything for you, you'd still be that broke kid with nothing." That broke me. It was as if she couldn't see my hard work, only her sacrifices. I realized then that success had changed the power balance in our relationship. Before, I was the struggling dreamer, and they were the disappointed parents. Now I was the one in control, financially, emotionally, and socially. And maybe, just maybe, that made them feel small. I didn't want that. I wanted them to feel proud, not resentful. So I decided to fly home and face them in person. When I arrived at their house, the same one I grew up in, it felt smaller than I remembered. The paint was peeling, the garden was unkempt, and yet the memories hit me like a tidal wave. I walked into the living room where my mom was sitting, flipping through old photo albums. She looked up and smiled faintly. My dad came out from the kitchen, holding the same stern expression he always had when we used to argue. "You came," he said, not with joy, but with formality, like I was a guest, not their son. We sat in silence for a while before my dad spoke. "Son, you've done well. We're proud of you. But you need to understand, we invested in you when no one else did." That word invested burned in my chest. "Dad," I said softly, "you didn't invest in me. You raised me. That's what parents do." He sighed and looked away. "We gave up our dreams so you could chase yours. Now that you made it, we deserve our share." I didn't know what to say. A part of me wanted to scream, another part wanted to hug him and cry. Instead, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. "Fine," I said quietly. "How much will make this stop?" My mom's eyes filled with tears, and my dad hesitated before saying, "Whatever you think is fair." I wired them $500,000 that day. $500,000. More than they'd ever made in their lives. They thanked me. My mom hugged me, but her touch felt different. It didn't feel like love anymore. It felt like closure. For a few months, things seemed better. My parents stopped calling me to complain. They started traveling, buying new things, and posting pictures online about their successful son. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Money might solve problems, but it can't fix broken trust. Every time I saw them, it felt like there was an invisible wall between us, a quiet reminder that love had been replaced by financial balance. Then came the next blow. I was invited to a major conference in San Francisco to speak about my entrepreneurial journey. The topic was building from nothing. My story went viral again. Millions watched the video, and in every interview, I credited my parents for raising me with discipline and love. I thought maybe that public gratitude would finally heal things. But instead, a week later, my mom sent me a message that said, "You mentioned us on TV. We deserve a percentage of the company." "That's part of our contribution." I froze. My jaw literally dropped. I called her, trying to laugh it off. "Mom, you're joking, right?" But she wasn't. She and my dad had spoken to a lawyer. They wanted shares in my company. I didn't even know how to process that. I tried explaining that BizNest was built with my blood, sweat, and sleepless nights, not their money. But they argued that emotional labor and upbringing counted as early investment. It felt surreal. The people who once scolded me for dreaming too big were now fighting for a slice of that dream. I thought about cutting ties completely, but that felt too cruel. They were still my parents, after all. So I tried a compromise. I set up a lifelong trust fund for them, enough to live comfortably forever. I even wrote them a heartfelt letter explaining that this was my way of saying thank you, not paying them off. I thought that would end it. But it didn't. They called again, this time angry. "We don't want your charity," my dad said. "We want what's rightfully ours." I tried to stay calm, but my voice cracked. "Dad, when you taught me how to ride a bike, did you ever ask for a payment plan? When you helped me with my homework, did you keep a receipt? Because that's what this feels like now." He hung up without saying a word. That night, I stared at the city skyline from my office window, realizing that no matter how high I climbed, I could never escape the guilt of being too successful for my own family. It's ironic, isn't it? The same success that was supposed to bring us closer only pushed us further apart. I started wondering what maybe they weren't greedy. Maybe they were just lost, unable to understand what my success really meant. Maybe they felt left behind. I decided to visit them one last time, not as a CEO, not as a millionaire, but as their son. I left my watch, my car keys, my phone, everything, and took a cab to their house. When I walked in, my mom looked startled, my dad confused. "I just want to talk," I said. We sat down, and for the first time in years, there were no spreadsheets, no money talk, just silence and tears. "Mom, Dad," I began softly, "you don't owe me for giving me life. And I don't owe you for raising me. What we owe each other is love, forgiveness, and time. If we lose that, what's the point of all this success?" My mom cried quietly. My dad looked away, his eyes glistening. "We just wanted to feel like we mattered," he said. That's when I realized it was never about money. It was about recognition, about them wanting to feel that their sacrifices weren't forgotten. That night, I didn't leave. I stayed. We ate dinner together for the first time in years. Simple, home-cooked food that tasted better than any five-star meal. We didn't fix everything that night, but we started to understand each other again. And that, to me, was worth more than $45 million. Welcome back to Life Stories Network, where we share the stories that make you laugh, cry, and think about life a little differently. This is the final part of I Built a $45 million company alone. Now my parents say I owe them for every birthday they missed. In parts 1 and 2, you saw how success can twist love into something unrecognizable. But in this last chapter, I'll tell you how I finally found peace, not through money, but through something far more powerful: understanding. After that night, when we shared dinner in tears, I stayed with my parents for a few days. It felt strange at first, waking up to the smell of my mom's cooking again, hearing my dad humming in the garden like he used to when I was a kid. The air felt heavy with unspoken emotions, but also lighter, like a storm had passed. For the first time in years, we weren't arguing about money, investments, or who owed what. We were just family, and I realized how long it had been since I'd felt that. On the second morning, my dad asked me to join him for a walk. The same path we used to take when I was a kid, the one behind the park, with cracked sidewalks and old oak trees. We walked in silence for a while before he said, "You know, son, when I asked you for money, I wasn't proud of it. I just didn't know how else to feel included in your success." His voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw my father not as the man who raised me, but as a man who had fears of his own, fears of being forgotten. I stopped walking and looked at him. "Dad, I built my company because of what you taught me. Every time you told me to get up after failing, every time you worked late to pay the bills, those lessons built me more than any investor ever could. He didn't say anything, but I saw a tear roll down his cheek. "We just wanted to feel like we mattered," he whispered again. And in that moment, I realized something. Sometimes parents don't want your money. They just want your acknowledgement. They want to know they still hold a place in your story. That night, we sat together in the living room, watching old home videos. There I was, a 7-year-old kid trying to blow out too many candles on a tiny cake. My mom's voice in the background saying, "Make a wish, sweetheart." My dad laughing. I hadn't seen those videos in decades. Suddenly, I remembered that no matter what happened later, there was love here once. Real, pure, uncalculated love. Maybe somewhere along the way, success buried it under pride, guilt, and expectations. But it was still there. So I made a decision. The next day, I invited my parents to visit the BizNest headquarters, not as guests, but as my family. I wanted them to see what their son had built, not as a product of rebellion, but as a reflection of everything they taught me. When they arrived, my team greeted them warmly. My mom's eyes widened at the huge glass office, the awards on the wall, and the framed photo of me and her from my childhood sitting on my desk. My dad walked around quietly, touching the logo on the wall as if it were something sacred. Then I gathered everyone in the office and said, "Everyone, meet my real investors, my parents." The room erupted in applause. My mom covered her face, crying. My dad just stood there, frozen, and then smiled. That proud, rare smile I hadn't seen since I was a kid. I didn't give them shares in the company, but I gave them something they needed more: recognition. From that day on, they stopped talking about what I owed them. They started talking about what we'd achieved together. Over the next few months, our relationship slowly healed. We talked more, laughed more, argued less. My mom would call just to ask if I'd eaten. My dad started advising me on life again, not business. The emotional distance that once felt like an ocean was now a bridge we both worked to cross. I realized that sometimes success doesn't break families. Ego does. Both theirs and mine. Because I wasn't innocent either. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped calling, stopped visiting, and started thinking they wouldn't understand my world. Maybe that distance made them feel left behind. One evening, I asked my mom why she had kept a list of all the things they spent on me. She smiled softly and said, "Because I didn't want to forget. Every penny was a reminder of how much we gave you, and how proud we were of every step." It hit me like a ton of bricks. What I saw as an invoice was actually her way of holding on to memories. Every line wasn't a debt. It was love written in numbers. A few months later, I bought them a new house, not as a repayment, but as a gift. I told them, "This is for all the times you believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself." They cried. My dad hugged me tightly and said, "You don't owe us anything, son. You've given us more than we ever dreamed of." And just like that, the bitterness faded. What once was an argument about money turned into a deeper understanding of what family really means. It's not about who gave more or who owes who. It's about staying connected even when life changes you. Because in the end, no success is worth losing the people who shaped your heart. Sometimes I still think back to that first night when I checked my bank balance and saw $38,067. I remember feeling alone, hopeless, and misunderstood. If I could go back, I'd tell that version of myself, "You'll make it." But remember, success isn't a solo journey. It's built on the shoulders of everyone who ever believed in you, even when they didn't show it the right way. Today, BizNest is valued at over $45 million, and my parents are retired, living peacefully. They still joke about sending me an invoice now and then, but we laugh about it together. I visit every weekend, and every time I walk into that familiar house, I realize something. I didn't build my empire alone. I built it with every sacrifice, every tear, every tough love moment that shaped who I am. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You can build a business with your hands, but you build a life with your heart. And family, no matter how complicated, and will always be part of that foundation. So, to everyone listening right now, chasing your dreams, remember this. Success means nothing if you lose the people you love along the way. Don't wait until it's too late to tell them how much they mean to you. Because sometimes all they really want is to know they still matter in your story. Thank you for listening to this journey on Life Stories Network. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because every week we bring you stories that remind you what being human truly means.